Hello and welcome to Harvest to You. I'm Pastor Marc, and it is a joy to have you with us today. Listen, before we start the sermon today, I want you to know about harvesttoyou.org. This is a space where you can find additional resources like sermons and devotionals, even a book I recently wrote. It's also a space where you can request prayer. I know that life can be hard, even lonely sometimes, and you just need someone to come alongside you. We would love for harvesttoyou.org to be a spot where you can find equipping, resources, and even prayer for your life. Deuteronomy chapter number 10, if you would. Deuteronomy chapter 10. As you turn over to Deuteronomy 10, I want you to think about a question. And here's the question for you. When are you at your happiest? If you surveyed maybe a year and you said, I want to pick out my happiest moments from the year, what would your happiest moments be? Researchers and sociologists have examined this question at length, and you know what they say the answer is? It's not when you're on the beach. It's not when you get a pay raise. It's not when you get your kids to bed on time, although that may be a close second. They say that when you're at your happiest is when you're sitting at a table, eating a good meal with those who are friends or perhaps those who are on their way to becoming friends. It's when you are sitting around a table eating a meal with people who are friends or family, people that you love. They say those are our happiest moments because there's something about a table and there's something about food even. Food has this amazing way of lowering defenses and raising joy. There are plenty of people in your life that they may not want to pray with you, but they would gladly eat chips and salsa with you. There are many friendships that got started over a plate of chicken wings. Food is an amazing thing. Tables are an amazing thing. And if you think about it, probably some of your fondest memories are associated with a meal. The day that you got married, more than likely, you had some sort of reception after that wedding, and you sat there with the people that know and love you best, and you had a reception. You had food, you had cake, you had a meal. On your anniversary, you may not always, but you likely go celebrate and have some sort of meal or some sort of dinner that's relatively traditional for us. If you think about the major holidays that we really love and hold near and dear to our heart, what is associated with those so often? Christmas Eve dinner, Easter lunch, the Thanksgiving meal. What are those moments? They're moments with people you love gathered around a table eating good food. From the very beginning, God intended us to find happiness not in our stuff, but in sharing. Not in having a full plate, but in having a full table. There's something that is just heartwarming about sitting and eating with those that you love. So it's no surprise to us that Jesus, if you study his life and ministry, spent a lot of time around tables. If you look at how Jesus operated, meals were more than food. Meals were about friendship. Meals were about faith. Meals were about invitations for people to put their faith in him. And today we're going to talk about just that. It is a practice from the life of Jesus that many have dubbed the practice of hospitality. It is that of food and tables and how a meal can become ministry and how Jesus made meals ministry so often in his life. And I want us to understand just a few very basic things about this practice of engagement, which is the practice of hospitality. I want you to know something. There's something you need to know, then there's something you need to do, and then I want you to understand why you should do it. What do you need to know? What do you need to do? Why do you need to do it? Okay? So here's what you need to know. I could summarize what you need to know in one word, and that word is tradition. Out of curiosity, how many golf fans do we have in the room? You played on the high school golf team. You like to golf now. You like to maybe watch golf, or you will caddy for your husband while he likes golf. How many golf fans are in the room? Let me get a show of hands to all my golf fans. Okay. There is the most iconic golf tournament in all of golf. It's one of the majors. It's hosted every April in Augusta, Georgia. there is a golf tournament called the Masters. How many of you are familiar with the Masters? Let me get a raise of hands. Okay, many of you. Jack was in the first service. Jack was sitting right in the back, and he had a green jacket on. He said, I'm familiar with the Masters. I said, Jack, I love your green jacket, because that's part of the Masters tradition. The winner gets to wear a green jacket. If you ever watch the Masters on television, the green looks like otherworldly. It's greener than real life. It feels like the commentators are all whispering, this is for birdie. It's real soft. It's real quiet. You can almost smell the azaleas through the TV screen. It's an amazing thing to watch the Masters. And there is a catchphrase that is associated with the Masters that Jim Nantz, one of the commentators, made famous many years ago, and it is the moniker of the Masters golf tournament. I'm not going to ask you to say it, but anyone know what the moniker is? You know what I'm talking about? A tradition unlike any other. That's what they call the Masters. A tradition unlike any other. And there are so many traditions that are baked into that tournament, one of which is a meal. The winner of the Masters tournament the previous year gets to host a meal with all of the players the following year, and they get to pick the menu for what everyone eats, and they all sit before the tournament and they eat a meal together. Or maybe in the middle of the tournament, I don't recall. But it's a tradition that's unlike any other. I say all that for this reason. You as a Christian are part of a tradition that is unlike any other, and it is not a golf tradition. It is a hospitality tradition. And many Christians don't know this, understand this, realize this, because honestly, it's a little down the totem pole when it comes to like salvation and redemption and is there a heaven. It's not exactly something you cover in doctrines class right away, but it's something you should understand biblically, that your spiritual roots tap deep into the soil of rich hospitality. They do. You have a pedigree, if you're a Christian, of hospitality. This starts in the Old Testament. There are many instances in the Old Testament, like Abraham hosting those in his tent and those sorts of things, but the hospitality tradition really gets off and running when it comes to the Mosaic law that is given at Mount Sinai. God comes to the children of Israel after they have exited Egypt, and he tells them lots of things that they need to do. And in Deuteronomy, they recapitulate what they need to do and what the law is. And there's this moment in Deuteronomy that I want us to read together in Deuteronomy 10, verse 18, where it says that God executes judgment of the fatherless and the widow, meaning God has a special care and concern for those who are orphaned and for those who are widowed. Then it goes on to say, he loves the stranger in giving him food and raiment. The orphan and the widow and the foreigner, the stranger, God has a special concern for them to clothe them and to feed them, to take care of the basic necessities of their life. Listen to verse 19. So, children of Israel, you love, therefore, the stranger. I want you to have a social concern for the outsiders as well. I want you to clothe them. I want you to feed them. I want you to bless them. Listen to this. For you were strangers in the land of Egypt. Masterful rationale. What he's saying is, remember when you were destitute, there was a famine, and you were struggling to eat. And Joseph, via the providence of God, had been sent before Isaac and the boys, and Joseph was in the land of Egypt, and they came down to Egypt, and they said, we need help. And Egypt opened their doors. Egypt gave them land. Egypt gave them food. Egypt was hospitable to them and took care of them. Now, we know as time went on, that soured, and that turned into slavery, and then that turned into the Exodus and all that was encapsulated there. But God is drawing them back, not to the Exodus. He's drawing them back to before that, when he says, you desperately needed the hospitality of somebody else. And they were hospitable to you, and they kept you on their feet, and they kept you going. So I want you to have the same heart for other people, and I want you to find people that are falling outside of the social fabric, like orphans and widows and foreigners, and I want you to go love them and bless them, and I want you to be hospitable to them. Now fast forward to the time of Jesus. Jesus is now a Jewish man, and there's rich hospitality tradition inside of his culture now that has been baked into the culture because of the Word of God. And Jesus steps onto the scene and begins to break the mold. Because the hospitality of the Jewish people began to have exclusions. They were hospitable to the orphan, sure, but to the Samaritan, nah. Hospitable to the widow, fine, but to the tax collector, nah. What happened inside of the Jewish culture is that they were hospitable to those that were physically destitute, but they were not hospitable to those who were spiritually destitute. And Jesus breaks the mold and says, watch me be hospitable, not just to the physically destitute. And he cared for people, and he healed people, and he restored their sight, and he helped the lepers, and he did that. But he began to be hospitable to those who were spiritually destitute. And he took a ton of flack for it. They criticized the fire out of him because all of a sudden he was eating with the people that you're not supposed to eat with. As a matter of fact, we're told in Luke chapter number 7 how Jesus came. Not why he came. Don't conflate the two. Jesus came to give his life a ransom for many. Jesus came not to be ministered unto, but to minister. Jesus came to seek and to save that which is lost. That's why he came. But how did he come? What was his method? Not his purpose, but what was his method? And Luke tells us that John the Baptist came neither eating nor drinking. He didn't eat, he didn't drink wine, it says, but you say he has a devil. But Jesus, the Son of Man, he's come eating and drinking. And you say, behold, a gluttonous man, a winebibber, a friend of publicans and sinners. See what's happening? Jesus is coming and he's sitting at tables and he's welcoming people in and he's eating with them and he's drinking with them, and they're saying that shouldn't be. Shame on you. You don't eat with them. They don't deserve your love. They don't deserve the meal. That you shouldn't eat with them. And Jesus all of a sudden expands the scope of this rich hospitality tradition to now be a tradition unlike any other. When he says, I want the physically destitute to be cared for, but I want the spiritually destitute to be cared for, and all are welcome at my table. Jesus coming not with an army of angels, not with a blaze of glory, but with a dinner bell in his hand. And as such, the early church began to understand we should do that. If this is how he came, maybe this is how we should go. And so they began to be hospitable. There's so many instances of this that we could look at, and I'll just give you a couple to round out this idea of the tradition that you're a part of. But Romans 15 would hint at this when it says that we should receive one another. Why? Because Christ also received us to the glory of God. If Jesus took you when you were a stranger and an enemy and a sinner, and he welcomed you in and said, come into my family and let me pour mercy and grace on you and let me give you my spiritual riches and let me give you a home in heaven and let me take away your sin. If he received us when we really didn't deserve it, if he did that for us, then let's receive each other. Let's open our homes and our tables and our lives and our hearts to other people. Hebrews would tell us just bluntly that we should let brotherly love continue and don't forget to entertain strangers. Hey, be sure that you don't lose sight of, you got to be hospitable to people who you don't know and people who are foreigners and people that they're not in your friend group really, but you have to open your home and your lives to them. So the point is this, You are part of a rich tradition, and that tradition is one of hospitality. Whether you know it or not, or whether you even like it or not, that is a tradition that you're a part of. It's part of your spiritual pedigree, and one to be inherited and appreciated and cherished and celebrated. So there's a tradition. What do you need to know? You're a part of something really, really beautiful. But there's also something that you need to do. You say, well, what do I need to do? Well, I hope that you can answer it by now. You got to go be hospitable. That's what you need to do. It's that simple. You're supposed to take the baton and say, if Jesus received me, then I'll receive other people. And how can I continue this? And frankly, there's 1,000 ways that you can continue this. This is at the heart of foster care and adoption. This is at the heart of diaconal ministry for widows and caring for widows. This is at the heart of you wanting to welcome your small group into your home for a bonfire. This is at the heart of so many things. There's so many ways to expand this, but I want to give you a couple just really practical notes. This is a very practical section of the sermon because I want to equip you and help you, and then we'll turn back to spiritual application in a moment. But sometimes when you hear that you're supposed to be hospitable, you have in your mind all kinds of visions or ideas or pressures that are not realistic and something you shouldn't put on yourself. And I want to help liberate you and free you so that you can do this very well and very fluently. So first of all, just as a matter of practicality, when you're doing hospitality, you want to avoid being cliquish. The idea of hospitality is not less than you having your 10 best friends into your house for a meal, but it is more than that. It is not to say that the only people you can be hospitable to are people that you don't know or strangers. That's not to say that at all. But it does mean that it should expand beyond that. And there is a dark side to quote unquote hospitality if you're not careful that becomes this us four no more. We go to restaurants together, we hang out together, we celebrate each other, we're there and you leave other people out, and that is not the goal at all. That's actually the opposite of the goal. Hospitality is supposed to be very expansive, and you want to be mindful that you don't become a clique. This would be the case for you if you're having people over to your home. This would be the case for you if you're a teenager sitting in the lunchroom and there's the jock table and the brain table and the whatever table. It's good for a Christian 16-year-old to go into the cafeteria and to say, listen, anybody's welcome at my table. I will welcome anyone. You can sit with me. Come on, get in here. Hey, you want to sit with us? Like, there's a hospitable mentality that can apply in so many instances that Christians are supposed to exhibit and not be cliquish. You also don't want to overcomplicate it. Just as a matter of practicality, don't overcomplicate hospitality. There is a huge danger if you think hospitality and immediately you think Martha Stewart, Joanna Gaines, Rich Carlton, and I'm not them. Listen, there is hospitality there, and you certainly can learn some things there, but that is an idyllic version of hospitality that most of us are never going to attain to, and you need to know that's okay. Hospitality could be the world's best brisket that you make that just knocks your socks off, and it also could be a bowl of popcorn while you watch the Steelers game with someone. It could be something very inexpensive and easy. It could be something that's very expensive with a lot of labor and a lot of work, and anything in between. If you invite me to your house and you got Uncrustable PB&Js, I'll be happy as a June bug. I'll be so happy. It doesn't have to be something that is elaborate, and you have to kind of defang hospitality and take the pressure off to realize that, you know what, there's 1,000 ways to apply this, and if you feel like, you know what, I would be hospitable if I had 1,000 more square feet in my house. I would be hospitable if I got a pay raise and had more money in the budget. I would be hospitable if I didn't have little kids and they have nap times and they're gonna be crazy running around the house. You're gonna talk yourself out of it all day long. There are probably 1,000 hurdles to you being hospitable, and all of us have those in our life, but don't use those as excuses. Work around them and do your best, and people will understand. one of the Likins hospitality, probably tradition I could call it at this point, is one that we fell into by accident, and it's like the easiest thing in the world for us to do, truthfully, but we just kind of happened upon it. Last spring, our Wednesday night children's program, which is Awana, is the name of that program. And if you have kids that are elementary age, bringing them to that. It's a great time on Wednesday night. There's also nursery if you have kids that are younger than that. Our youth group happens on Wednesday night. There's adult Bible studies. So if you don't normally come on Wednesday night, I know several hundred of you do, but there's a lot happening here. And the Awana program said, we're going to have a bring a friend night. I forget exactly what they called it, but it was basically invite a friend. So we told our children, we said, hey, you should go around the neighborhood and you should invite your friends, and invite them to come with you to church in Awana, and tell them they can come over to the house for dinner, we'll have pizza, and then we'll take them to church. We got a minivan, and then we got a Yukon. I mean, we can fit like 14 people in our vehicles, and we'll just drive 2 cars, we'll take them to church, we'll bring them back afterwards, they can take their bikes and they can ride home, and it'll be great. So they did, and the kids came, and we had pizza, and then we took them to Awana, and at the end of the night, they said, can we do this again next week? And we said, sure, why not? So the next week, we got pizza again, and they came over again, and we went to church again and came home again. Can we do this again next week? And so that was 3 or 4 weeks in a row. We did this. And we've since then, I mean, literally this last Wednesday, it's every Wednesday now. We don't always have pizza at this point, but every Wednesday, a gaggle of neighborhood boys. We have tons of boys in our neighborhood. We have very few girls. I don't know why that is. It's just the way it is in our neighborhood. They'll migrate over to the house. They'll play. They'll go on the trampoline and play gaga ball or whatever they're doing. And then every Wednesday, want to stay for dinner? Sure. And they sit down, and Maggie's just learned, make extra on Wednesdays, whatever we're eating that day. Want to go to church with us? Sure. And not every single week, but almost without fail, there's someone who's with us and ate with us, and it wasn't complicated. It wasn't fancy. It was anything but. It was loud and it was noisy. I mean, they're elementary boys. I mean, it was chaos. But we sit down and we pray over our food and we eat together and we ask questions about each other's day, and then they run out of there as fast as they can to go play on the trampoline again, and then we gather them up and find all the shoes wherever they're at around the yard, and then we come to church and we have a great time, and it's just been a small hospitality tradition that has evolved that is not complex at all, really. We already have the vehicles, we already have the house, we already have the table, we already have the food, we're already driving here, we're already driving back home. It's flowed seamlessly. If you look for it, there will be points of hospitality for you in your life that you can take advantage of like that. So don't overcomplicate it. I would also say you have my permission to lean on other people where you're lacking. But if you say, man, I love to host, we got this great setup in our backyard and we love that, but I hate the food. Well, then you be the place and get your friend to be the food and have them cook, or vice versa. Or if you love to host and the food, but I'm not very social, I would rather be glued to my oven than I would be talking to Bob. Okay? Then get a social butterfly to come help you host, and you take care of all the X's and O's. Like, you can team up in this sort of stuff. I learned this well from my time in Arkansas, where I went to Bible college. I was there for 4 years getting my bachelor's degree, and the pastor of the church there hosted every Sunday. But it was a team approach, and it was amazing just to watch and observe, because his mother-in-law, Mrs. Yoshida, Mrs. Yo is what we called her, it was at her house. She hosted, she had the house clean, whatever it was. She had a nice place. Then our pastor's wife, Carol Ann is her name, she brought the entree, and then anyone else who was invited was asked to bring a side or dessert. And it was this team approach, but I wasn't there every Sunday, but sporadically I would be invited as part of the church or whatever it was, and there'd be 15 to 20 people that showed up every Sunday, and someone did the place, and someone did the entree, and someone did the side, and someone else did the dessert, and it was a team effort, but there was a lot of hospitality that happened. If this is you, then in your small group, I know not all of you are in a group, but most of you are, raise your hand next time you're in a group and say, hey, I'd love to be better at hospitality. This is my niche. Would you be willing, anyone want to compliment me? Anyone want to do this once a month on Sundays after church, or whatever it may be? There's ways to practically work that out with other people to make this more attainable. I would also tell you to start with people that you know. If you're not great at hospitality and you don't have a rich personal tradition of that, and then expand to people you don't know. Invite your group over for a bonfire or brisket, or even just to roast some marshmallows and hang out, whatever it may be. Start with the people that are in your neighborhood that you know. Start with those that are coworkers that you're close with. And then start to expand that to the coworker who's in the other department who you email with, but you really don't know that well, or the neighbors that live down the street and you know what car they drive because you see them in and out of their driveway, but you don't know their kids' names. Like those people, start to invite them over, like expand that as time goes on, but start with some people that you know, make it a little more comfortable, expand as you go along. And what you'll find is, I believe that just about anybody can execute some sort of level of hospitality with those that are in their circle of influence or within their orbit. It takes some work, it takes some planning for sure. It takes maybe even some sacrifice at times for sure. But there is an execution piece of this that you can practically insert yourself. If you say, I'm a single guy, I don't know, hostings, isn't that like a married couple thing? No. You're allowed to have people over and you're allowed to hang out and you can be hospitable too. Like this is available for everyone and should be something that's accessed for everyone. So what do you need to know? Tradition. You're a part of a rich tradition of hospitality. What do you need to do? Execution. You actually need to go do it. But why do you need to do it? And this is the motivation. I could give you the motivation of you're commanded to, and that would be true. I could give you the motivation of, well, Jesus did it. Excuse me. Jesus did it, and you're supposed to model after him. That would be true. But I'll give you 3 others outside of that. Honestly, this sermon is strategically placed because the last 2 weeks, we have been talking about the practice of evangelism and the practice of community. And what you'll find is that 2 of the motivations are evangelism and community. That the practice of hospitality dovetails so unbelievably well with community and evangelism that it works as a tool to help you accomplish those things. So let's start with community. The church, the early church, was around a table a lot. There's no doubt about this. The Lord's Supper was a supper. They called it the Lord's Supper because it wasn't like juice and a cracker. Like they ate a meal together for that. The agape feast is sometimes what they called it. They were in each other's homes. You see this so clearly in Acts chapter number 2, where we're told that they were together in unity in the temple for corporate worship, but they were also house to house, quote, eating their meat with gladness and singleness of heart. They were in each other's homes, eating with gladness, having food with joy, and having those moments where they experience communal joy because they're there with other people who love Jesus, their brothers and sisters, eating a meal together. That's a beautiful thing that the early church exemplified so well that our church should continue. Now, I understand we live in a different day and age where there's a lot of individualism and there's a lot of isolation and there's a lot of like people locking their front doors, not opening their front doors. But nevertheless, it's a powerful tool for community and love of the brother. It's also a powerful tool for evangelism. Understand that for Jesus, eating with people was more than a social nicety. For Jesus, eating with people was a spiritual necessity. It was where conversations happened. It was where love was shared. It was where invitations were extended for people to come follow him. And there was both this eating a Last Supper with the people that he loved, that were part of his tribe, and eating with Zacchaeus, the publican, who people said no one should touch that guy with a 10-foot pole, and inviting him to be his follower. There's been some recent surveys done by the Barna Group. This is 2023, and they found that 65% of Americans report feeling lonely. They found that 58% of young adults say they have no one who truly knows them. And they found that 76% of churchgoers say they've never been invited into another member's home. Now, I think that our statistics as a congregation would be a lot better than that. But nevertheless, they found that the majority of people said, I go to church, but no one's ever invited me to their house. No one's ever said, come share a meal with me. That is not a continuation of a rich tradition. That actually is fumbling the ball and losing sight of the rich tradition of hospitality. And I would encourage you, if you would say, well, I'm here, no one's ever invited me to their house. Well, why don't you invite someone to your house? They'll probably reciprocate. I bet they may come with like some flowers to say thank you, or they may show up with some cookies for you and your family, or they may the next month say, hey, you hosted us, why don't you come over to our place? Like there's something beautiful about that when the bodies loving each other and they're eating together and they're drinking together and they're just having a great time. And there's something beautiful about when you're taking people who don't know Jesus and you're inviting them into your home and you're just getting to know them on a human level. Now, a quick note on the evangelism one. When I say invite someone to your home with some sort of evangelistic motivation, I do not mean, and hear me well on this, I do not mean invite them over to your home, have a meal, and then pull out the flannel graph and give them the presentation on creation to Christ for half an hour, okay? Many of us know what it's like to be invited to some presumable hangout only to find out it was a Cutco knife presentation or it was a Tupperware party where they were going to ask you for money. And we know that feeling that's like, I don't like this, right? So it doesn't have to be some big evangelistic pitch. That's not what I'm suggesting at all. I'm just saying that missions could perhaps be as simple as inviting someone to your home, sitting down and just be normal. If you would normally pray for your food, then stop and say, hey, I don't know if you would normally pray before you have a meal, but we're a Christian household and we normally say grace before we have a meal. Would it be okay if we prayed with you and asked their permission? And then when they say yes, because they're going to say yes, say, is there anything we could pray for you about? And you'd be amazed how just being normal will dovetail into other conversations, maybe that day, maybe that week, maybe that year. But just be hospitable and welcome people into your home. If you're looking for a good idea on how to do this, I would recommend to you the book, The Gospel Comes with a House Key by Rosaria Butterfield, who talks about how she came to faith because people invited her, Christians invited her into their home and were hospitable to her. But don't make it a bait and switch. When they're coming over for dinner, then all of a sudden they showed up for church. Now, if you want to have a Bible study in your house, that's fine. Invite them to the Bible study and let them know up front. But if you're inviting them over for dinner, just have dinner and have a great time. So why do we do this? Well, we do it for community's sake, for love of the brother. We do it for evangelism's sake, to evangelize sinners. Well, we also do it for joy. To go back to how we started the sermon, some of our most joy-inducing moments every year are sitting at a table with people that we love, eating a good meal. That's just the way that it works. Several authors that I read on this particular practice of Jesus called it the practice of celebration. They chose celebration instead of hospitality to intimate the celebratory nature of being at a meal together. One author called it practicing joy. That's what he called hospitality, practicing joy. And he made such a great point. He said, sometimes when we get saved as Christians, we think there's joy in Jesus, and there is, and we think we're miserable, so I'm just going to go to my prayer closet, I'm going to say, Jesus, please make me joyful, and he's just going to drop a joy bomb on me, and boom, joy is just going to explode in my heart, and then I'll be joyous. That's not really how it works. When you become a follower of Jesus, there is this enormous amount of joy in Jesus. If you'll follow Jesus and if you'll practice his ways, the joy oftentimes comes from doing what you're supposed to be doing, and that is joy engendering and joy producing. There's actually joy that comes from hospitality that we can't lose sight of, and we have a lot more control over this. So I love the idea of hospitality being practicing joy. That's a great way to think about it. I was prepping for the sermon and thinking about it, as is my habit, a couple weeks in advance. I put the sermon in the oven a couple weeks in advance in my head, And then the week of, I start to put everything on paper and start to take notes and copy and really get intense on it. But this has been mulling around in my head, and I knew that last Sunday I wasn't here, and so grateful for Pastor Dom and him covering and giving us the practice of evangelism. But I knew that we were going to be in Philadelphia for our family last weekend. It was a Friedreich's ataxia rare disease weekend. That's what we were doing. Friday, we had double clinic with our boys. We've had many clinic appointments with our boys. We've never had them both on the same day. And it's a zoo. I mean, you're being shuttled and ushered all over the hospital left and right, from floor 10 for the test and measurements and the neurological exams, to floor 1 for blood work, to floor 12 for your EKG, back to floor 1 for more blood work, back to floor 12 for your echocardiogram, back to floor 10 for your eye test, and you're just going all over the place. And we know what to expect with clinic days. They're long and not the most fun thing in the world, to tell you the truth. And we knew that after that, we had a bike ride fundraiser to raise funds and awareness for the rare disease that my boys have. And we were going to do that together. And then on Monday, there was a conference for parents and caregivers for those who have children with Friedreich's ataxia, and just a lot of sessions and neurologists and doctors to talk to, and pharmaceutical companies and other parents. And it was just like a really giant, heavy Friedreich's ataxia weekend for us. And we knew this. We knew going into it, like it's going to be, it's just going to be a very different weekend. And I told Maggie, I said, I'd like to schedule some joy in the middle of this. I'd like to put in the middle of it a dinner where we can just stop and not have heavy, but just have celebrate. And we had a few people that actually came, and they came to Philly with us, and they rode bikes with us last weekend. The Osbornes, Pastor Matt and Katie and his kids came, and Jocelyn Allen came with us. I said, let's just go to dinner and treat everyone to a meal and just have an unbelievable time. So we did. We scheduled a reservation for the 12 of us at Maggiano's. Anyone ever eaten at a Maggiano's? I see maybe a couple hands. It's like Olive Garden's daddy, okay? Maggiano's is like a much better version of Olive Garden. It's an Italian kitchen. And there was 12 of us, so we had our adult table of 5, and then we had our kid table of 7. You got, 7, 5 to 11-year-olds, and that's exactly how you would expect it to be. Chaos. But we didn't care, So we go in and just said, listen, this is a night for celebration. We're so glad you guys are with us. We're here just to talk and to get caught up and to eat, and we're going to eat. And they serve at Maggiano's, they serve family style. Well, they'll just bring out a tray of stuff, and then you can dish it onto your plate. And little did I know how much food was going to be involved in this. And they brought to us, it was never ending. It was Caesar salad, it was calamari, it was meatballs, and that's like just to get started. And then there was some cheese and some meat and some crackers, and then there was lasagna and chicken Alfredo and chicken piccata and beef tenderloin, and then there was dessert, there was bread, then there was cheesecake and chocolate cake and lemon cookies. I mean, it was just like, it was a meal that gave Thanksgiving a run for its money. I mean, it was incredible. And we sat there and we ate and we talked and we laughed. And at the end of it, the waitress came up and she said, hey, here's your bill. I want you to know I comped half the meal, which has never, ever happened to me. There was not a complaint. There was nothing wrong. There was no like, hey, you cooked this wrong so that, they take something off the bill. No, she, for whatever reason, I still don't know the reason, she decided to comp half the meal, and then my pocketbook celebrated as well. And it was fantastic. And we paid the bill and we walked out of there, and I was just reminded that there is so much joy in sitting down with people that you love, your friends or your family, and just eating a good meal together. Now, that's not every day or every week necessarily that you can pull that off. I understand. But God made us to find joy at a table, and Jesus showed us how to bring that joy to other people. I think it's imperative for Christians to understand this and to practice this. So yes, hospitality is a discipline. It takes time, it takes planning, it takes sacrifice. It does. But hospitality is also a delight. It brings joy, it brings community, and it brings gospel fruit. And in a world that's so isolated and divided, and I dare say desperately hoping for joy, I think it may be a societal antidote if there were some of God's people that moved into it and just said, let's be hospitable to each other, to my brothers and sisters in Jesus, and to those who don't know Jesus. And let's see if that has a joy-engendering, joy-producing effect on our lives. It's my prayer that today's message challenged and encouraged you in your walk with Christ. If this sermon was a blessing to you, know that it was made available because of our financial partners. I want to take a moment and invite you to be a part of that tribe. I know not everyone's in a position to give, and if that's you, then just let this broadcast be a blessing, no strings attached. But if God's blessed you with the ability to give, I would love for you to link arms with us and support what God is doing here. As a small way of saying thank you for your generosity, I'd love to send you a copy of my new book, The Prayer Jesus Gave. This is a guided tour through the model prayer, what some would call the Our Father. And if you've ever felt like your prayer life could use an upgrade, I know it will be a help. You can give and receive your copy at harvesttoyou.org/give or by mailing a donation to the address on your screen. Thank you so much for tuning in this week. We'll see you next Sunday.